What's up guys, it's Will here, back again, and today we're here to talk about the most disappointing Hot Toys that have been released ever. But before we get started, make sure to click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that notification bell so you're notified when content goes live on this channel. That said, let's bask in our disappointment together. All right, guys, so before we get started, let's just throw that disclaimer out like we always tend to do. If you own these figures and you like these figures, awesome. I'm not here to rain on your parade. I'm not here to make your life difficult. I'm just going over what most collectors perceive to be disappointing Hot Toys, what I perceive to be disappointing Hot Toys from what I've experienced either seeing them in person or holding them in hand. These are the Hot Toys to me that most let me down in one way or another. So just to reiterate, before you start flaming me in the comments section down there, you are more than free to love these figures. So you do you, collect what you love, and be happy and proud of your collection. That said, let's talk about these Hot Toys disappointments. At number 13, we have the Iron Man Mark 85. Now, before rioting occurs in the comments, the Mark 85 suit itself is amazing. I'm mostly referring to the fiasco that occurred around the Tony Stark head sculpt. For those who don't remember what occurred, let me explain. Hot Toys originally released this figure back in December 2020. However, the head sculpt was so controversial that an exchange system was announced not long after the original version started shipping. There was so much backlash from that original release that Hot Toys decided to set a new precedent and offer a replacement head sculpt. This new head sculpt is essentially an older Mark 50 head sculpt with an updated hairpiece. While the recalled head sculpt was labeled the Tony Stank head sculpt and forever lived in infamy, the updated head sculpt was deemed satisfactory by collectors. This overall was a disappointing experience, and some collectors ended up stuck with the original Tony Stank head sculpt due to Sideshow and other companies lacking enough replacement parts to offer exchanges. While most collectors ended up satisfied, Hot Toys uncharacteristically dropped the ball on this release. At number 12, we have the Armorer. The Armorer was a bit of a controversial release for Hot Toys. When The Mandalorian was hot during its first and second season, many collectors were clamoring for a 1/6 scale Armorer to be announced from Hot Toys. Well, dreams eventually came true, but for some reason those dreams were left unfulfilled for most. One of the biggest complaints about the Armorer was the single jointed elbows. This actually made articulation and posing more challenging and more restrictive. In addition, some collectors reported the figure to have subpar quality and an overall cheap feeling to her compared to other Hot Toys figures. This figure was a Toy Fair exclusive and did release fairly quickly, so that may explain the subpar quality. Still though, this figure was released when Mando hype was still very high, and most of the Mando line was very well received. While this figure is not outright hated, it is polarizing, and its weaknesses make it a bit disappointing considering the anticipation and hype surrounding its release. At number 11, we have the Purge Trooper from the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus TV series. This figure was labeled as the worst Hot Toys figure of 2023 by some collectors. Now, this figure was already at a bit of a disadvantage because Disney decided to change the design from what many fans had experienced and loved in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor video games. This design is something new, and a lot of collectors weren't on board with the changes. Once the figure arrived in hand, the disappointments became more evident as many collectors described the figure as feeling cheap in hand. The design was controversial, the quality of the figure was controversial, and for a trooper that's meant to pop on your shelf, that's a tough sell. For $250, Hot Toys collectors were mostly disappointed with this one. At number 10, we have the Black Chrome Death Trooper. The Chrome Death Trooper was a figure that I personally was very excited for. I originally owned the Rogue One Death Trooper and loved it, as the Death Trooper is actually my favorite Star Wars trooper, but when the Chrome version was announced, I saw an amazing opportunity to upgrade. That was until Sideshow was getting ready to start shipping the new Chrome version, and the Black Chrome looked gold? I've seen variations in the appearance based on the lighting, but the final product certainly varied quite significantly from what was shown at the Comic-Con it was initially previewed at. So what started out as an exciting possibility of a chrome, shiny, badass Death Trooper ended up as a golden disappointment. At number 9, we have Ant-Man from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp is probably the worst Hot Toys head sculpt of all time. After so many amazing Hot Toys releases, Hot Toys decided to release a Paul Rudd head sculpt that is so bad that the figure community went from a state of apathy to a state of unified rage. I've never seen collectors go from caring so little about a figure to caring so much about a figure in the span of 24 hours. This is entirely due to how creepy this head sculpt is. Some collectors even went so far as to pose their new Paul Rudd in a Pennywise sewer base because it honestly looks creepier than the actual Pennywise head does in there. The rest of the figure is actually pretty good, but with a head sculpt so atrocious it's deemed a crime against humanity, this Ant-Man figure deserves its spot on the top 10 most disappointing Hot Toys figures. At number 8, we have Harley Quinn caution tape jacket. Harley Quinn has never been my favorite character. While I think Margot Robbie is a fantastic actress, I haven't really connected to her character as much as I hoped I would. Regardless, the Hot Toys Harley Quinn caution tape jacket figure is a massive disappointment. Hot Toys was in a difficult position because of Harley's tattoos, but the visible joints on this figure are unsightly, and they actually actively work against Hot Toys' primary objective, and that's realism. Articulation matters, but realism comes first, and this figure looks like a toy. The head sculpt is also one of Hot Toys' weaker efforts as it pertains to Margot Robbie's likeness. The teeth look a bit awkward and her smile seems a bit unnatural overall. I'm sure Hot Toys didn't feel the need to go above and beyond for this figure since the box office disappointment that was Birds of Prey, but it's still a disappointing output nonetheless. At number 7, we have Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Hot Toys Doc Brown has holes in his head. This is actually for a pair of glasses that aren't even included with the figure. This figure has a one-note expression with a mid-likeness and holes in the side of the head. To make matters worse, the plutonium case is actually made of cardboard. Now, on the shelf, this truly isn't the end of the world, but it doesn't exactly align with the price tag of a high-end collectible from Hot Toys. This is one of the most iconic characters in all of cinema, and Hot Toys should have put a little more effort into this one to get it right. This figure is not a complete lost cause, but some glaring flaws make this a disappointing release for Back to the Future fans. At number 6, we have Ahsoka Tano from Mando. This choice may be a bit controversial, but reflecting on this figure, I'm not thrilled with how it turned out. I always thought the head sculpt was pretty decent, but when I saw it in person, I wasn't thrilled. We have to address the major elephant in the room, that being the instability of the arms. I've seen several reports of people breaking their Ahsoka arms because of how they're built. If the arms are articulated in a way that isn't extremely gentle, the forearm will actually snap. And from what I'm told, this can happen very easily. For our first live action Ahsoka figure, this isn't ideal. And now there's a new Ahsoka the White version, which people like a lot more, so collectors who bought the original are left a little disappointed. At number 5, we have The Force Awakens Chewbacca. Chewbacca is a character that has only been produced by Hot Toys twice. The version from The Force Awakens has become a bit of a meme because of how it came out looking more like a dog than Chewbacca. The color on the fur is also much different than the more coveted A New Hope version. The Force Awakens looks a bit like Chewie went to the stylist for some highlights. While screen accurate from a color standpoint, most collectors prefer the darker brown color of the original version. Hopefully, Hot Toys produces another Chewbacca soon because this Force Awakens version is living in infamy for the time being. At number 4, we have Infinity War Hulkbuster. Infinity War Hulkbuster is a disappointment when comparing it to the Age of Ultron version. While the Infinity War version is certainly more affordable, it lacks the shelf presence. This figure is made of vinyl and is a power pose, meaning it does not articulate. For Hot Toys collectors, articulation is one of the primary selling points of a figure because articulation promotes engagement with the figure itself. The collector can work to create a pose that represents their appreciation for the character, but with this figure, they simply cannot. That said, diecast is also a selling point for Iron Man figures in particular, and this has none. This figure was a miss all around, unfortunately. At number 3, we have Captain America Infinity War. Infinity War was a unique look for Steve Rogers' Captain America. While he didn't possess his iconic shield, he did have a battle-damaged look to him, a new beard, and some cool new Wakandan vibranium shields. Also consider that many collectors like myself consider Avengers Infinity War to be the best Marvel movie in existence, and you have an iconic figure in the making here. The problem was the head sculpt. This head sculpt does not capture Chris Evans' likeness to the degree Hot Toys is capable of. The beard makes his lips look unnatural, and the likeness simply isn't there. As some say, the head sculpt is the soul of the figure, and the soul is a bit lacking with this one. At number 2, we have Ultron Prime. Ultron Prime was a release that should have been a banger, and eventually a grail. I just said that the soul of the figure lies in the head sculpt. Well, the life of the figure lies in the eyes. The eyes of Ultron Prime look amazing when lit up. However, Hot Toys collectors know that the included batteries will last approximately 15 minutes until a replacement is needed. This makes light up functions that use these button batteries almost useless because they mandate the batteries be changed so frequent in order to use said function. Ultron Prime is also not composed of die-cast parts, which would be be a nice avenue of exploration should Hot Toys choose to remake this figure at some point. Simply put, this figure should exude presence due to the character design, but it simply does not unless you're constantly changing your batteries. And at number 1, we get to the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man from Amazing Spider-Man 2. What most consider to be a Spider-Man No Way Home figure was actually labeled as an Amazing Spider-Man 2 figure due to what many collectors theorize to be a licensing issue with either Sony or Andrew Garfield himself. It's nice that this figure exists, but its quality is simply not on par with what turned out to be a pretty good, pretty iconic line in the Spider-Man No Way Home line. The head sculpt looks very dated, the proportions look off, and the accessories are pretty bare bones for a Spider-Man figure. For a Spider-Man that is many people's favorite iteration of an iconic classic character, this one misses the mark. All right, guys, so that's that. Those are the 13 most disappointing Hot Toys releases of all time, in my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments below. If you've owned any of these figures, if you've seen them in person, if you thought, oh man, those really are pretty sus, let me know. If you really love those figures, let me know. I really want to hear your thoughts, see whether I'm off base, on base. I guess we'll figure that out. If there's any figures that I excluded from the list that you felt were also equally as or more disappointing than the ones on the list, let me know. And guys, before you go, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell like I mentioned earlier. I really appreciate all the support. And if there's any other topics you want to see me cover, let me know in the comments below. That said, guys, I will catch you in the next video. Peace out. See you later. Bye. Bye.